not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. Trinity Sunday. Kind of went in a little different direction, thanks to what I've heard the last few days, what I've gone through in the last few days. And I went in totally different. Fear? No. We try so very much to not have any fear in our lives. Yes, we do try. I saw a bumper sticker once that read, "No fear." It had a little picture of a little boy on it with his arm bended up like this, showing his bicep. I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it. I think such a proclamation amounts to little more than whistling by a graveside. No fear, you say? I don't think so. Take a moment and think of our lives here on this earth. You will find that we have a lot to fear on this earth. Most obvious of which, of course, is the graveyard that we go whistling by. Then you think, old age, illness, crimes, like the shootings that we've been hearing on TV lately, family breakdowns, cancer, Alzheimer's, car accidents, tornadoes, those that are man-made and those that are natural. There is all of that, plus our own natural human shortcomings, those defects of character that manage to come out of nowhere and, of course, bite us right on the butt. I could go on and on, but I won't. I'm starting to scare myself when I think of all those things. No fear. In our text today, Apostle Paul is promising us a life without fear. If we allow ourselves to be led by the Spirit of God, we already have been adopted as children by none other than God, the creator of all the universe, who brought for the earth that brought forth us. How can this be? Adopted by God? What does this mean? Are we not already children of God simply by virtue of being born? Well, yeah, we are all God's children from birth, or perhaps before. We are all descendants of Adam and Eve. God created us. We are told in our Bible opening chapters of Psalm 139, it says that God knows us even when we are in our mother's womb. Paul is talking about something else. What we are being reminded of is that the one God created us out of dust that itself came out of nothing. We are absolutely dependent upon God's grace for everyone that we are and everything we have. Such knowledge does not come naturally to us. We have a tendency to want to see ourselves as independent, especially us down easters, able to stand on our own 2 feet and pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Dependent of God's grace? Yeah, right. That's religion as a crutch. Religion for people who can't or won't take responsibility for their own lives. And a God who would so arrange life on this earth that God's creatures would need to be ever dependent upon him. That's a bullet projected out into the universe by needy, cowardly people. That's the God that was in the beginning created by man. So the argument goes. Okay, enough, I suppose, as far as it goes. But what we're being told here has more to do simply with relationships than with neediness. It is simply a fact of the human condition that in the first place we need each other. Did you get that? We need each other. Nothing that we do is done solely with our hands, by ourselves. Our parents gave birth to us, raised us to adulthood while we are unable to care for ourselves. Our friends and neighbors and family stand by us. No one ever built a factory with his whole hands, ran the machinery by himself, marketed his own goods, hauled his own goods to market with trucks that he designed and made himself on roads he built and maintained by himself. We sometimes are made to feel that way. This deep down knowledge of our own dependence is perhaps the source in the origin of the little guy stuck on the people's bumper, shaking his fist at the sky. No fear! I can do it all myself. I can stand on my own 2 feet. I don't need anybody else. I don't need anybody but my own. Our dependency is especially obvious when we would move intentionally into life with God. In the very place God is God, and we're not. Our very knowledge of God is something that is given to us. We have this great Judeo-Christian tradition that has been around since before our grandparents were born. Handed down to them, and all the way down to you and I. We become adopted as children of God when we acknowledge this and own it for ourselves. I'm not talking about the abstract creation, but about becoming a part of God's family. A part of what God intended when God created the heavens and the earth. A part of what God intended when God created you and I. What we are talking about here is the Holy Spirit dwelling within us and working on us, aligning our will with God's will and putting us into a new relationship with God. As Christians, we believe, of course, that we see what this relationship looks like in Jesus Christ. God created us to be human in a way that Jesus was human. We can, no doubt, in a variety of ways, choose to take on this way of being human. Or we can choose not to take this on, or choose actively to work against it. You can stay home. We choose. We choose this way of being human not because of any brilliance or insight on our part, but first and foremost because God first chose us. We are led by the Spirit of God to choose life with God. When we respond, the part of this responding, of course, is acknowledging our dependence on God. We are adopted as children of God. We are led by the Spirit of God into become the children of God. It is the very Spirit of God living in us and working upon us that leads us to reach out to God, to acknowledge Him for our needs. Paul says this is not spirit of slavery, dragging us, cringing back to what we are afraid of before. This is a spirit of adoption, enabling us to cry out to God, Abba, Father. It is a spirit of intimate relationships. This is a spirit that leads us away from what was perhaps our greatest fear. The greatest ones I didn't name. The fear of God. That is, the fear of the awful God of judgment and implacable expectation. This is not a place of slavery to religion in the bad sense of the word. This is to say, this is not a spirit dragging us back to a rigid, lifeless set of codes and laws, observances and rituals that we constantly live in fear of breaking. No, this is the spirit of adoption in the good sense of the word. Total acceptance into a loving family. Fear? No. Yes, no fear. What are you afraid of? Forget that little sticker on the back of the car. Be honest now. What are we afraid of? Are you afraid of illness? How about the loss of all your money? Loss of your social status? Are you afraid as when you look around and see declining numbers in our church? Are you afraid as loved ones leave you? Yes, these are fearful things. They are. Even more fearsome is the angry God of religion in the bad sense of the word. The God of implacable judgment. The God who holds our slightest shortcomings against us forever. Even so, fear not. Yes, failures and shortcomings, we have plenty of them. But we are not talking about the angry God who holds all that against us. Dare we say that that God does not exist? Our God, the God of Jesus Christ, the living God, the only God there is, was and ever will be, has adopted us as his own and is with us to heal us. The things we suffer are the sufferings that is inevitable as we choose life with God, as we attempt to carry the gospel of Christ into a hard-hearted world. Yet God is with us through it all. And because God is with us and not against us, we need not fear even the worst of fears, the fearsome God of religion.